So by this point, you're all probably used to my long-winded critiques and ramblings pointing out how garbage Disney's Star Wars is. That they're so completely incapable of telling any story whatsoever without shoving an endless landfill of nostalgia down our gullets. Well, Ahsoka isn't too far off the mark either. You're all probably looking at the timestamp for this video and thinking, this is so unlike the long man to put out a video so short and so quickly. Well, in that regard, normally I would critique something so heinously idiotic, but there were a couple of barriers. One being that there's not enough beer to make this show passable, but the second being that I could barely stomach the first 2-minute opening scene that I just couldn't force myself to break down the entire pillar of garbage that was Dave Filoni's wet dream. I honestly don't think that I could stand creating another montage of every Disney consumer clapping, but I figured that I'd just spare you all the pain and show it here in a 10-minute video instead. And on that note, grab a beer, let's sift through the garbage and see what's left to recycle out of this absolute dumpster fire. So in the beginning of this scene, we see an Imperial-class shuttle as it approaches a New Republic cruiser. The captain requests that the shuttle submit their transmission code for clearance. So far so good, no issues here. Unfortunately, that's about as far as any measure of logic will go. The New Republic ship receives the clearance code and is surprised to learn that it is an old Jedi code. The first officer then asks the captain who those individuals are that sent the code. As if he would suddenly know, considering that he has about as much information as the audience at this point. To clarify, not a whole lot. In regards to the legitimacy of the code, the captain declares that he is calling their bluff. Based on that statement alone, one would presume that they would pull their ship with a tractor beam and prepare a group of soldiers armed with stun blasters to apprehend those supposed Jedi. But then you stop and remember that Dave Filoni wrote this and you get this moment here.
I'm calling their bluff. Signal them to come aboard.
So, just to clear up any confusion, the captain has declared his suspicions and his disbelief towards the legitimacy of the clearance code on those individuals being Jedi that he then decided to let the shuttle board their cruiser at their own leisure. Why would he do that? If he saw an old Imperial shuttle, would he not want to be as cautious as possible?
A good question. For another time.
What if these were pirates or mercenaries?
A good question. For another time.
What if they were Sith pretending to be Jedi?
A good question. For another time.
Are we going to get any answers here?
Stop asking questions!
Anyways, the captain then declares how he wants to meet the individuals claiming to be Jedi firsthand before ordering for security to meet him in the hangar. So if the captain were this suspicious, why not send someone else to ensure the legitimacy of the identities of the individuals coming aboard? Why would the captain, the most important individual on the ship, be the one to do this? If he genuinely believed them to be Jedi, then it would make sense that he would greet them as he would have held the highest ranking in addressing the Jedi. But if he were so skeptical as to believe them to be imposters, then why oversee it himself rather than sending, oh, I don't know, the security detail on his ship? He then leaves his first officer in charge. Wait a minute. If he were this suspicious to the point that he would have a gun, then why would he not leave a gun for the person he left in charge of the ship? Even if they actually were Jedi, why would he bother taking that risk when not knowing that no enemy factions would have boarded their ship without supplying his first officer with a weapon to defend herself? Oh, right. That's why. So, the captain arrives in the hangar and we see his security team.
What in the
This team comprised of 5 human soldiers and 1 calamari soldier. Does anyone else understand as to why it would be so important to have individual fingers when handling a long-ranged weapon? That out of all of the individuals to have on your team and handling a gun, that you would not choose an individual with webbed hands. Also, out of all of the soldiers there, why is the only one with his gun out all the way in the back? Why do the rest of them still have their weapons holstered? If the point of the security team is to apprehend their enemies, then would it not make more sense to carry a gun that would immediately incapacitate them? Or, I don't know, to actually have their weapons drawn? Anyways, the 2 individuals exit the ramp, to which the captain greets them, expressing his surprise at meeting any Jedi so far out in deep space. He then declares how he doesn't buy into them being Jedi. You would think that he would have coordinated a signal to his security team before his arrival to be prepared for any confrontation, rather than having them stand with their hands behind their back and their weapons holstered. The captain then proudly states how they are not Jedi, how they were worthless Imperial trash, and that they should have surrendered when the Empire had fallen, all before requesting one of his soldiers to get a droid to scan these individuals for identification. Again, if he was so confident in his suspicions, would it not have been prudent for him to have done this the moment that they arrived? I can already hear it now.
It's obvious that he was overconfident, you dick.
Well, my lovely viewers, if he were indeed so confident, then that would have only further supported the point for him wanting to apprehend these individuals in a legitimately intelligent manner rather than what he actually did. Balin then says that he will ensure that they were properly identified before his apprentice draws her lightsaber and begins her attack. The captain then draws his weapon before Balin halts him with the force. So, a few things. As Shin cut her way through the soldiers, we saw the captain draw his weapon. We can see off to the left that the captain has a clear shot, yet he just stands there watching her before looking back at Balin. It would have been pretty smart of him to take the shot. Speaking of shots, in the next one, we see that the captain has returned to looking towards Shin before being halted by Balin with the force. Just to recap, the captain had only drawn his weapon after Shin had ignited her lightsaber and cut down several of his allies, had made the conscious choice in deciding not to take the clear and obvious shot when his enemy's back was exposed, glanced back at Balin for no reason before deciding to finally take the shot at Shin before being stopped by Balin. It's almost as if everyone in the show has to be stupid so that we can have an action scene. Anyways, Balin then says that the captain was indeed correct about one thing, that they were not Jedi before stabbing him in the chest. So, does anyone else remember this moment? Because Dave certainly didn't. Based on the track record of Disney and their accuracy to superheated blades of plasma piercing through their opponents, we can all rest easy knowing that this captain will be perfectly fine. The first officer is informed that the captain and half of the security detail were killed before one of the soldiers nearby gives her a blaster. Wait a minute. Half of the security detail was killed? There were only 12 soldiers on this Republic cruiser? Also, the fact that the ship was put on lockdown and the first officer wasn't given a blaster until after the captain and half of the security detail was killed? Yep, that certainly sounds like Dave. Shin then kills the first officer and the rest of the crew. Imagine if everyone in that room had a blaster, that they may have stood a chance. But instead the crew paid no attention to the blaster fire or the lightsaber cutting through their first officer. For those saying that there weren't only 12 soldiers, in the beginning, we had already seen the first half. At this moment here, we see the 2 struck by blaster bolts before being flung back by the force. We then see the remaining 4 running down the hall. Balin is then seen walking down the hall blocking blaster fire.
Very Darth Vader of him.
This is such a Vader in the hallway like scene.
Ah, sick. Oh, it's like mirroring the Darth Vader hallway.
Why do I find they low-key tried to remake the Darth Vader hallway scene just now?
It's very reminiscent of Vader in
Yeah.
A New Hope and the end of Rogue One.
Oh, very reminiscent of Rogue One with Vader walking in the alley.
Ooh, very reminiscent to Darth Vader's scene.
Man, this is like, it's feeding that a little bit of Rogue One Darth Vader hallway.
Oh, it's like a Darth Vader scene in the hallway scene.
Yeah.
Oh, this is giving me Vader and Rogue One hallway.
This is giving Rogue One.
Yeah.
Hallway scene a little bit.
Bro, he's giving such Darth Vader vibes.
Right? His hallway scene.
I know, the hallway scene.
Yeah, this ain't gonna work out for you guys. You're in a hallway.
It's like the Vader hallway scene.
He's got a Vader hallway scene.
You know, we're getting flashbacks. We're being at the cinema for Rogue One.
It does give Darth Vader vibes, this bloke.
This is very reminiscent of Darth Vader in his hallway scene.
What a bunch of clowns.
How does he keep up with the news like that?
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
Balin then continues to block the blaster fire from the 3 soldiers. As the soldier in the middle is being choked by Balin, the other 2 soldiers simply stand there doing nothing despite their guns working perfectly fine just a few seconds ago. Alrighty then. He then unlocks the door holding the prisoner they were after despite having no knowledge of the functionality of those types of locks. But hey, look at who wrote this. Let's just chalk it up to the Force. Dave certainly has no problem doing that.
Who used the Force? That's not how the Force works.
Just look at the lightsabers and clap. Rules don't matter anymore. Then again, have they ever since 2015?